And we are live.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome.
Episode 24?
Is it episode 24?
Yes.
Yes, sir. 24.
With our guest this week, Maria.
Hi, hello.
Reuters journalist, here to talk to us about some of the stories that she worked on.
And give her opinions on everything.
Talk about the news, about how newsrooms work. And also some of the cool stories that you've worked on. I think it'll be interesting, especially for our audience. I get asked about / lectured / complained to about the media all the time, and I find that I become like the personification of the media, in air quotes to people, and they talk to me. No, people talk to me like I'm David Remnick at the New Yorker. I'm like, hey man, I'm just some guy who writes about the army. It's not. I can't really tell you that much, but we're really happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And with that, I mean, just to start off, since our last episode, we were talking about Qasem Soleimani being killed in a drone strike in Iraq, right at Baghdad International Airport. We got into that with Jeff Kirkham. And since then, I mean, I think we were all kind of like sitting around waiting for some sort of like retaliation, what was going to happen. And then we saw it come to pass this last week with, 14 ballistic missiles fired from Iran at a couple bases, Erbil, what was the other one?
Al-Assad, right?
Al-Assad Air Base. Mm-hmm. And in Taji, they got some air raid warnings, but there were no impacts there. And there were 4 failures. 4 of the missiles failed. And interestingly, I reported this. I haven't seen anyone else cover this, but there was one of those failed missiles was fired at a base that we have people on in Jordan. Mm-hmm. And the missile failed. It didn't hit that base. But interestingly, I haven't seen anyone else pick up on that yet.
And now, how do we know it failed? Like, what does it mean that it failed?
It means the missile did not reach its destination. It came apart somewhere. Something went wrong. So.
Well, you know my thoughts on it. So.
Oh, you think like they weren't supposed to impact?
Correct.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that it's pretty clear that like you're at least partially right. Like they could have launched 1,000 missiles and flattened those bases, right, if they wanted to.
Well, they could have mobilized their militias to really rock it. They could have killed civilians at a hotel in Jordan, and American civilians. Right. Like if they wanted to kill Americans, they easily could have done that.
They very clearly calibrated that attack.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that like it was a sham in the sense like they weren't trying to. You start lobbing ballistic missiles around, somebody could poke an eye out, right? But yeah, they quite clearly they were not like trying to go over the top with it.
I honestly, I know that you really can't give, and let's talk about Maria real quick here. That how long have you been a journalist for?
It's been about 10 years now.
About 10 years.
Yeah.
And how long have you been with Reuters?
With the news agency itself for about 5 years now.
About 5 years? Okay. And we want to know that Maria can tell us a lot about the field of journalism and what your job entails and things like that. But we're not going to get a lot. We're not going to get a lot of opinion just because Reuters, unlike many other organizations, does really focus on their people coming across as unbiased, and you don't want.
Yeah, I mean, unbiased reporting is sort of a pillar of Reuters as a news organization, and our job as journalists is to really report the facts. So
yeah,
it's my daily job, and that's what I really focus on. Yes.
So when it comes to Iran, I know that you work on different types of breaking news, and that's not really Iran isn't necessarily in your lane, correct?
Yeah, it's
okay.
really not.
And I want you to be able to share whatever you're comfortable with sharing in terms of your own personal feelings or opinions or anything else, and also feel free not to share. Mm-hmm. Well, give us your, if you want, to the limit that you feel you can. what is your perspective on the whole thing running up with Iran, whether it's historical, whether it's current, anything that you want, anything you feel comfortable commenting on?
Well, as I said, it's really not my beat. It's not my
Sure.
area of expertise. I just observed just there's a great deal of reporting that is being done on it, and obviously it's a crucial story. It's a crucial global story. So I think the way it's gonna play a major role in people's lives in a way, like in America as well. It's something that I feel there's a lot of public interest in.
Yeah.
And it's important that it's obviously reported on accurately and
Right.
with just having all the facts that are available examined and presented to the public in the various possible way.
And when it is something like that, whether it's the Iran striking against U.S. bases or U.S. inhabited bases, or something that happens stateside, like at what point in the journalistic process, when it comes to facts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think that facts sometimes is like, how do you determine? I mean, is it sort of a group, like an editorial decision? Is it the decision of individual reporters? Like, when do you feel like the facts are, not only do you have enough facts, but when the facts are solidified enough that we know these facts and this is how we verify these facts, to report facts, if that makes sense?
Well, for the area I cover, which sort of includes a lot of breaking news, facts just sort of presents themselves. So it's very important to have official sources provide you with those facts, and it's very important to be cautious about reporting, especially again in breaking news situation where things can be really fluid, and there's a lot of things that are not immediately clear to the public and to the reporters who are doing the digging, sort of, to speak up. So it's very important, I think, as a reporter, do your due diligence and tap into your sources, your trusted sources that you obviously have a relationship with, and are the ones that can provide you with the facts that you're comfortable reporting with. And obviously there's a chain of command in a way.
Sure.
There are layers in every news organization before the story actually gets published, where we make sure that not only the information has been reported correctly, but it's been vetted, and it's been vetted by obviously more than one person. So by the time that the finished product is put out, we are confident that the facts that we're presenting are correct.
Okay.
And so this is sort of the way that the machine works in a way. There's many layers of vetting, and then there's many layers of just ensuring that we're all doing our job correctly and accurately and independently to just present the facts. That's the ultimate goal. We're just telling you the story as we learn it, as we
Right. This is what we know so
understand it,
far.
and we're based on the information and the facts that we have, and that are the facts that are reliable and that come from sources that we trust.
Yeah. I know that, for me, when Jack and I were discussing Iran, and when we've discussed other things, Jack and I have differing opinions on certain things, and I try very, very hard to police my bias, and it's very, very hard for me to remain aware of when I'm being biased.
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier too about how I think a lot of people out there, they don't even register really the difference between the opinion section and the news section.
Right.
Like, it all kind of just runs together. So they'll read an opinion piece and think that's like the journalistic bias of an entire paper, when really it's not. But with that said, I treat this show as commentary, not as journalism.
Well, 100%.
I come on here ranting and raving.
Yeah, 100%.
My day job, I don't even really reference or talk about the work I do as a journalist here, just because of that reason. I don't want to make it seem like when I'm here, I'm speaking on behalf of that entity.
Right.
Because I'm not.
Right.
You know, when I work there and I write there, I'm writing journalism, and my editor will be like, Jack, you can't publish that, you're editorializing. But on here, you know, we really are saying what we think or what we feel, and, you know, I try to be honest about that and say this is an opinion, this is a gut reaction, but you know, it is commentary at the end. It's not necessarily journalism.
Yeah, I mean, because I'll tell you, like with the Iran situation, when they first started launching, and Jack and I were talking, and you know, and I think, you know, I said, look, this is speculation. Like, I hope that I'm right. You know, that there won't be any American lives lost.
Oh, right.
That, you know, that the reason these missiles were launched from Iran and not from, you know, Shia militias and whatnot is because Iran wanted the world to know that they were the ones launching the missiles.
Right.
But they're going to be very diligent about not killing anybody because even
they only wanted to go so far.
They only want to go so far because, you know, Trump, whether you love him or hate him, is not a president. He is not a person like you know, the last 4 or 5 presidents that we've had who will draw a line in the sand and then don't cross that line, and then
he kind of did though.
But see, you and I disagree on that too, because
you're saying you're interpreting, you know, he said something, and then you're saying, well, what he meant was.
Well, no, because I think that he also clarified. Because you're saying that his line in the sand is if there's retaliation
against Americans or American assets,
right?
And they launched ballistic missiles and they blew up a whole bunch. They hit an active flight line full of Black Hawk helicopters.
I still believe, like, and again, like, often I find myself in a position defending Trump, and I don't want to defend Trump.
And also, I'm not attacking him either because I think he made the right decision.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, look, it's and you know, sort of going back to the trust in media is one. I think the trust has eroded both from the left and the right. You know, the right will call the, you know, left-leaning media fake news, and the left will call right-leaning media fake news, and then when, you know, like, there were some initial reports. Well, first Iran pushed the, you know, 30 Americans dead. Somehow they knew this from Iran.
Oh yeah.
And then there were some people on Twitter who were, you know, just posting, oh, you know, X number of American casualties, and people were like, well, where's your source? What are your facts? I was like, well, I saw this somewhere. And you know, and then people, you know, people are going to line up with whatever their site is. And people were saying, well, this is a lie. There were probably no American deaths. They're just using this as an excuse for war. Or, you know, on the flip side of that, you know, we need to go to war now. We need to bomb them, you know, turn them into glass or whatever. Then when it came out there were no casualties, then the same people who were saying that it was a lie that there were 30 were now saying that it's a lie that there were 0. We're just covering it up. You know,
well, I mean, I'll say at any rate, like, this whole last, week and a half, 2 weeks, this is a very, very dangerous game that was played. And any one person could have made a false move. As you said, if one soldier had been killed, you start lobbing ballistic missiles around and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, we could be having a very different conversation right now.
So how, I mean, have you, your organization, I mean, have you guys... And I know that, I mean, you're known for unbiased, and this is something that Jack turned me on to because I didn't know. Because, like, when Jack and I first, I'm very sort of down on the media, and down on the left-leaning media, down on the right-leaning media. Like, I don't want opinions. I just want the facts. I just, you know, I don't need, you know, some talking head on there who's really putting on an act, I feel, you know, to make millions of dollars. But I didn't, like, I've read newspapers before, or newspaper articles where it said AP or it said Reuters, but I never knew that they were there, that they had their own sort of, you know, thing going on.
Yeah, we do it too at the website I work for. Is, you know, is it AP? Yeah, it's AP that we have. So, do you want to explain that briefly?
Yeah,
how they have a wire service?
Yeah, exactly.
If I can,
and what is a wire service?
Yeah, because we're kind of like running our mouths here, but you actually work there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the organization I work for has been around for a long time, since the mid-19th century, and basically the way, obviously the business model has changed a lot over the last 150 years.
Sure.
But we are a wire service, like very much like the Associated Press, the AFP, and we provide information to not only consumers like you or anybody who has a computer or a phone, but we provide information to other means or outlets. For example, newspapers. For example, TV channels. For example, news aggregators. All did this, especially as the news business evolves, and it has evolved a lot over the past 10, 20 years. We are present across the globe in more than 100. We have more than 100 bureaus, more than 100 newsrooms, if I'm not mistaken, and therefore it means that we can be present in a lot of places where smaller outlets cannot afford. Right. So we provide information, whether it's text-based information or visual information, so photos and videos, and graphics, maps, that kind of stuff, to outlets who are interested in buying it. And we also serve, Reuters is mainly a financial news organization, so it was born, a large part of its business is financial news, and so it serves a broad clientele in that realm.
Right.
That's a very important part of what we do. And yes, the only goal is to provide accurate, independent, fast information to a vast array of clients and customers.
So what is the difference, the primary difference between like a wire service and would we say a media outlet? Is that different, or like what?
Well, it really depends. It's a good question, but it's very hard to answer because I think if I'm not mistaken, originally news agencies provided dispatches, so like very brief, succinct accounts of facts of what was going on in a specific situation, a specific place, just to give the rundown of exactly what, like sort of like a cable in a way. Now, obviously, the business has evolved, so. We're branching out, even news agents have branched out into different forms of storytelling, more, not ambitious, but more complicated, more complex, more varied ways of conveying the news. So it's very much an evolving business.
Okay.
So if I had to pin it down, I really wouldn't really know how. It's just what I can tell you is that the fundamental principles of what we do have remained the same for over 150 years, and we provide facts. We provide the news.
Yeah.
Reuters is also, as you mentioned, moving on to other forms of telling these stories. Some pretty impressive investigative pieces over the last couple of years.
Yes. Again, I cannot really speak to that. I'm not part of that team, but it's something that there's a large appetite for, and it's a very important form of storytelling to really like dig deep into fact finding and present stories that are complex in nature and require a lot of time and a lot of efforts and a lot of resources.
Was the story about the former NSA people working in the UAE, was that one of yours?
Yes, it
that
was from a team based in Washington.
That was really well done. And then, of course, the story that I interviewed Lee Tuttle about, the military housing story.
Yes.
Reuters did a big expose on that.
Yeah. Yes, I think it led to legislation in Congress actually being passed.
They had hearings. I'm not sure if they passed. They may have.
So let's talk about the NSA and UAE, and then we'll talk about the.
Oh boy.
And then we'll talk about the housing situation.
Like this,
for the people who aren't aware of it.
Yeah, this is super complicated.
It's very complicated. I'm not one of the reporters in them, but it was a really
long story short is the UAE is hunting for capabilities. and they have gone to the NSA, or former NSA people, former CIA people, former special operations people, to bring all of these people in. And now you can look at it, there are these two projects. There's this one where they were bringing in former NSA people, and they had someone from the NSA go into their boys, when they worked in the government, saying, yeah, this is NSA approved, when really it was just the UAE running amok.
So it's basically a false flag operation.
I don't.
In essence, I mean, and not really, I guess, but
Some of the employees, and I mean, maybe it's just after the fact, they're like trying to cover their ass.
Right.
But they were pretending they were acting under auspices when they weren't.
Right.
And it turned out that there was a massive surveillance. They were even surveilling journalists, American citizens. I mean, this is some really sketchy stuff they were doing.
Yeah.
Now the flip side to that, of course, is the story that came out in BuzzFeed with Dale Comstock, where they brought him in and a bunch of other dudes, ex-SEALs and other people, to form a direct action unit working in, where was it, in Aden?
Yeah, I think, I'm trying to remember now.
Well, I interviewed Dale about it. We'll get Dale in here one day. He'll tell us all about it. He's writing a book about it right now.
Oh, is he?
But Reuters did this. So BuzzFeed did the story about Dale and that direct action team that the UAE had set up, and then Reuters had done the story about the former NSA people.
There's a lot of very impressive investigative reporting from a lot of different outlets. BuzzFeed has been really good, I think, at really digging out.
Really,
stuff.
that is surprising to me because I would never.
BuzzFeed is not, perhaps was not.
They're better
really
than they used to be.
associated with this type of reporting, but they actually have a really impressive team of investigative journalists, and they produce some really high quality stories. So it's really I think in this constantly evolving news landscape, it's there's very good material coming out of very different places, and it's again, it's an evolving business. It's fascinating, having been here in this environment for over 10 years, how much things have changed.
Right.
From when I started.
Go into that. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the industry and moved, around the way you have, coming from Italy to the United States, coming into Reuters, and as your career has gone on, how you've seen this media landscape evolve.
So I was born and raised in Italy, and I've always wanted to be a writer, and so as I always say, I try to figure out a way to make some money out of it, and I was
Sure.
that was a really poor choice. At the beginning of my career, where you're like, oh my god, I thought I was gonna make some money, and when you start out, you're
joke's on you.
You're like, oh maybe. But then it's sort of like how I started. I interned for a bunch of places in Italy, and then I really wanted to get I really wanted to go abroad and try my luck. So I went to London first, and I was lucky enough to find some mentors there. I worked for an Italian news agency at first, and then I moved on to the Reuters Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Thomson Reuters, and there I focused on more sort of humanitarian type of journalism that was really interesting and really good to sort of develop honing my skills, or whatever they say. But I learned a lot during my time in London, and I did a stint at the Financial Times magazine, where I learned a bit about magazine journalism, which is again a very different beast and very, very interesting and very, very hard.
What makes it hard?
Well, I guess when you're a breaking news reporter, you're pretty much writing every day or every other day. In magazine journalism, depending on how often the magazine comes out, you have different deadlines, and the sort of the scope of the articles and the pieces is very different. So they tend to be longer, more in depth, or just they have a different flair. The way they're written is it's different, and it's very, very, very challenging and very interesting to learn that business, because it can be, I find, immensely satisfactory, because it's a beautiful way of writing in many cases. it really can bring out the writing skills of a journalist. But it's also challenging. Like they're lengthy pieces that have to be produced on a very tight deadline, and there's a lot of obviously coordination that goes into them, like preparing visuals and making sure that basically every cog in the machine is working properly. So it's very different journalism. It's I think the attitude also, the way the editors deal with words in magazines is different and very interesting.
It's more eloquent. It's like the sort of stuff you could find in.
You can refine your work a little bit more.
In the New Yorker or in Harper's or I don't know what, New York Times Magazine.
Yeah. There's also a lot of really good long form journalism in online outlets, just like purely online outlets that those things require a lot of resources. You have to.
A lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but yes, it's a big commitment. And to produce high quality journalism, it really requires dedication, resources, and talent. So
ProPublica is one of my favorites, but I think they're a foundation, right?
Yeah, they're nonprofit, so they rely on donations and grants. I think they are. In a way, sort of like a new model. But I don't know their inner workings, but the work that they put out has clearly earned some praise. They won Pulitzer Prizes, and they put out some really impressive work.
So you hit London. You're working on magazine features.
For a little bit. Then at the Reuters Foundation, I focused on. Lots of different things, but mainly reporting on humanitarian aid and issues that were not so much in the day-to-day news cycle. From that job, I moved to New York, which was a dream of mine since I was a kid, to living the Big Apple. And then I landed at Reuters Digital, which is sort of like the consumer-facing part of Reuters. So we serve that branch serves the website. It's the website, the social media sort of arm of things, and it was really interesting to be in digital strategy for a bit. And last year I moved on to the breaking news, the general assignment desk.
When you moved from London to New York, did you move with Reuters? Like, were you still
with Thomson Reuters?
With Thomson Reuters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When you were with like the financial news outlet or with the Italian news outlet, did you find? I mean, were there editorially were there pressures that there weren't with Reuters, or were there? I mean.
They're different.
They're different?
Yeah. I mean, Italy also, the way journalism is done in Italy is very different, I find.
Fast and loose.
It's I don't know, it's just a different way of approaching the news. And again, I should say I worked for Italian media for about 6 months of my life.
Okay.
So I really don't know.
We had Paul Cialino in here who was over in Italy covering the Amanda Knox case as a private investigator, and the stuff he was saying about the European media in general is just that they went crazy. They went just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think every country has its peculiarities.
Sure do.
Country's media rolls in a different way. You read all the time about the British tabloids. It's profoundly cultural, I feel, in a way. What I really was drawn to was news agency journalism, because it really sort of strived to present the facts and just...
Was what, news agency journalism?
Yeah, sort of like I wanted to learn the inner workings of the news business in a way, and the basic reporting skills, and it is what I feel I've been able to learn
during
my career.
in terms of like, because I think when you talk about the business model changing a lot, like I think that for a long time, with a lot of media in the United States, whether it was right leaning, left leaning, whatever, that we really saw a lot of the. Some of these agencies grew not agencies, but some of these media outlets grew very fast, very quickly, and they kind of shrank in on themselves. I think that we went through this process of outrage clickbait that, it's like, oh, yeah. And then but from both sides. And then I think that a fatigue set in and those.
That and Facebook shut a lot of it down.
But those, I think that people just got fatigued from it. I think that people just got tired of like, okay, what am I outraged about? What am I supposed to be outraged about today? So their financial models, blew up. They got sort of overvalued, and then they now everybody's like letting go. Do you feel as though like wire services like Reuters or AP, they sort of weather that storm just by remaining constant to their sort of values, or
no? I can't speak to whether the values. I think people, in the end, readers want to get a good service, right?
Sure.
They want to know. They want to get their information. We live in a world where there's an overload of information.
Sure.
Because of social media, the internet sort of exploded, and you can find pretty much whatever you're interested in online. I think as far as the media business is developing, there's a lot of figuring out, and there's a lot of I think people are just trying to maintain, to be true to their vocation and their calling in a way, because journalism is a calling in many ways, and do a service to the public. Then I'm not saying that it's like many other businesses, it's sort of like a trial and error. Path where there are certain things that have worked and certain things that have not worked, and certain things that we'll find out whether they work or not. It's a tough time, I think, to navigate the world of information, because there's so much of it out there, and it can be overwhelming. And when you're speaking of readers' fatigue, I don't know whether that's correct, but I feel.
I think outrage fatigue, not necessarily readers themselves, because you're right. People constantly, I think, want information.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
But I also hear of people who, mute their notifications because it's too much.
Sure. And that's the fatigue that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, I just really want the facts.
I turned all of them off on my phone because I have to for my own sanity. Otherwise, I'm getting, Donald Trump on my cell phone every 30 seconds, literally. So, you have to do that, like, just for your own mental health.
Sure.
But, it's like these extremes that, like, we all want information. I want to know what's going on in the world. I want to read world news. But man, I don't need it like coming at me like at 5 a.m. like a notification every 30 seconds. I think that's what leads to the fatigue. It's that the technology has allowed it to like insert itself into every waking moment of our lives.
Yeah. 100%.
And not just it goes well beyond news. Obviously, the technology is something that pervades our lives.
100%. Do you now some college programs now, some big ones I think are sort of teaching this idea of journalism as activism. Do you have an opinion about that? Do you want to share an opinion about that? Do you care about that?
Frankly, I don't think I'm qualified to speak to that. I just I think there's many avenues that the journalists can go down.
Okay.
And it's totally up to the individual or the organization that they work for.
Okay.
I'm not here to
bash anybody.
No. It's just not even that. It's just I feel like the one thing, and I try to sort of like learn and grow as I go. I think other people might have different ideas of what journalism means. It's well possible. Yeah, it's just something I know, as you said, that it's something that people are taking an interest in, and it's out there, and I think it's great that there's possibilities for people who want to explore different avenues and just experiment in different ways with what the profession is. I do think that sort of there are some very basic pillars that being a journalist sort of
You're so fair. I am such an opinionated bastard, I tell you.
No, but you guys have a commentary show, as you said. I think, and to that, I found really interesting the fact that you mentioned before, which is like, sometimes I don't even know whether it's an opinion or a straight news article, and I think it's important to have things clearly labeled, and as long as you explain yourself and you say what you mean, and you explain where you're coming from, and
I'm going to rename this live stream. We're going to call it Two White Guys Have Thoughts.
Many thoughts. Yeah. Two old white guys. Because look, not dealing with any,
We're not getting any younger.
No.
That's for sure.
Well, no one is it really?
No. Time is just, age is just a number, right, Maria?
I don't talk about that.
Let's answer a couple quick questions here. Alex Bennett, thank you very much for the super chat. Hi guys, what's your favorite meme regarding the current tensions with Iran, and how will memes be looked at by historians in the future?
There will be like glossy paged books, like telephone book thick with just like the memes of the 2010s. Like there it is.
Boomer.
Yeah, okay, boomer.
Yeah.
My favorite are, World War III meme, I think. Well, there have been a couple good ones, but one of the better ones is the one that says, America attacks Iran by bombing Iraq. Iran attacks America by bombing Iraq. And then it says Iraq, and it's a picture of this Arab guy, like...
Yeah, I was looking at, I stay off Twitter pretty well. I stay off all social media, but during that event, I was like reading through the translate function a lot of Iraqi and Iranian feeds, and poor Iraqis. I mean, seriously. I mean, they've been protesting for so long against the sort of the Iranian aligned government that they have right now.
Let me tell you, the Iraqi SWAT team commander that I worked with when I was in the army, Salam, hits me up on Facebook, last night, 2 nights ago, and I swear to God, he says to me, "Can we just have peace so that we can die?"
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of Iranians were too. They're like, "Oh, please, like, don't, no war, please, don't, we don't want this." I mean, that's, I don't know.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Guys?
Yes, ma'am.
What's your network like? Like, I know you guys talk to and you've kept in touch with a lot of the people that you've either served with or worked with in the past in previous roles. And are you in touch daily with a lot of these people? Where sort of maintains your network, and where do you get your information from?
I guess most of it evolves out of just friendships over the years. I don't know how. I mean, I also have a very non-traditional background in journalism. So for me, I try to develop long-term relationships and people that I'm friends with. There aren't too many people that are just like purely sources. I mean, and most of them are like, friends of mine. I consider them to be friends of mine, and they can in turn introduce me to other people, at certain times, So it's very, I don't know, it's a loose affinity network, if you will, people I served with, Maybe, but I mean, it extends out a lot more than that because a lot of those guys are out of the military now.
Yeah.
You know, they're off doing their thing. So.
Like you are.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't want to comment publicly on, you know, potentially anonymous sources, but you got to go out there. You got to find this information and put it out on the street where it belongs, Maria. I mean, that's how.
Well, you're a Columbia J school grad.
I never went to J school. I got my bachelor's degree in Columbia.
That's right. What was it?
Political science.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of for me. It's really just more of, you know, friends and people that I feel I have a lot in common with. That, you know, and we rap once in a while.
Yeah, I get most of my information from Jack. He's my source. He's my anonymous source. I don't. I mean, I still have a lot of friends in in the military and whatnot, but I don't really ask them about the goings on because I've never been a journalist. I've never, I have opinions about everything, but almost no knowledge. And I kind of prefer it that way.
Local man has opinions.
Yes, I kind of prefer it that way. I try to, like, for me, if I see a story like, House, whatever, Republicans vote against this or Democrats vote against this, then I'd rather, like, I want to know why, because, like, I know that Democrats don't hate veterans and I know that Republicans don't hate firemen, or, you know what I mean? Like, I know these things. So there's always more to the story than what anybody is willing, or not anybody.
The why is always like the best part of the story.
But why? Because generally there was a rider on the bill or something that was untenable to the other party, and those are the things that people will never really tell you. And I try to, when I look at something, I try to, I don't know, I don't believe that most people are evil. I don't believe that most people have malice in their heart. Even if they do really crappy things, it's because they think they're doing right, or they're doing right by their. So I try to look at why they're doing it. Like with this whole thing, with between Trump and Iran, and when Iran was striking, I was like, well, you know what? Like, I know that, like, there are a lot of hardliners in Iran, a lot of, religious hardliners in the government, in the regime, it's theocratic. But most of them don't want to die, it takes, I think, a young person who's ready to die for their country, whether it's America or whatever else, without a thought. And so for me, like, when they're like, okay, Iran's launching all these missiles, I'm like, okay, they know that Trump can be unhinged, I mean, I don't even know if unhinged is the right word, but he's already shown by killing Soleimani that he will do whatever.
The nationalistic pride involved in it.
It's not, but see, I don't think that things are just that simple. I don't think that things are simple. Look, Iran has been working against U.S. forces for ages in Iraq. Ages. I mean, I would say that most of the prosthetics that U.S. veterans have right now are thanks to Iranian EFPs. So to think that all of a sudden we're just randomly starting this war with Iran, like Iran has been at war with us for a long time. And whether it was Bush or Obama or whatever, nobody ever did anything about it. So was the strike against Soleimani the right thing to do? I don't know. I'm not that smart. What was it deserved? 100%. Is it going to cause escalations? Well, I don't know. They've already been fighting us. So we're, it's sort of that type of thing. Is like, are we okay saying that all the soldiers that Iran has killed to date, which is 500, 600, whatever, plus all the soldiers that they wounded, they don't mean anything. That Iran should get off scot-free because we don't want to lose another soldier. It's one of those things that and I don't know the answers to these things. You know, like
What's sort of the next piece of information that you guys are interested in finding out?
Regarding this issue?
Yeah.
What's Iran's long-term game plan on this? Because I think that they did the outward-facing, the public PR campaign, which was to lob some ballistic missiles at us. I want to know, these guys think over a longer period of time than we do, and I want to know, when are they going to try to assassinate an ambassador or a station chief? Like, I know in the back of their minds they got something they're planning to do to us. So maybe that's more of the sort of thing that the director of the CIA is thinking about right now. But as a journalist, that's something I'm very interested in. What's the next phase in this conflict between the two countries?
See, when it comes to this stuff, and I could be wrong, but you know how when you walk down the street and you have all these self-doubts, and everybody else seems so confident, like everything seems like they could just have their life together, and it's like it's just me who's kind of fucked up, and why does everybody seem that way? I don't know if any of you guys can relate to that, but the thing is that like we're all narcissistic. We can't help but be narcissistic because our thoughts are the only thoughts that we know, and so when I say narcissistic, it's not that we think we're great, but we are the center of our universe. And in America and in any other country, it's the same way. So with us, like a lot of Americans are going, what's Iran going to do next? Well, Iran, their leaders are also, like their leaders are not omnipotent. They're also like, well, what's America going to do next?
Yeah,
and specifically, what's Trump going to do next? And so, and you're right that I do think that they have a much longer view of this. They're waiting for the Mahdi. They're waiting for the caliphate. That's their goal, right? Their stated goal. I mean, they're a theocracy.
Well, for the crazy people.
For the people running the country. For the Ayatollahs.
Yeah. But, there's ministries and there's all sorts of bureaucrats in Iran. And
okay.
They're not just religious fanatics.
Okay.
Soleimani was a very pragmatic person.
Okay. It's not. I don't think that calling somebody who's true to their belief. I don't think that they're a fanatic. Westboro Baptist Church are fanatics.
But if you're like a harbinger of the apocalypse, that kind of falls under the category of a fanatic.
The caliphate is not the apocalypse. The caliphate is an accepted part of Islam. It's the 12th caliphate or the 12th imam,
the
right?
hidden imam, yeah.
The 12th imam. It's an accepted part of Islam. So it's not. We're not talking about loonies here. We're talking about people who are just true to their faith. Which we have a hard time doing because in America, we tend to be very secular. But the thing is so I do think that they have a long-term game plan, a much longer, like a game plan that extends hundreds if not thousands of years. Not necessarily a game plan, but they are waiting, for the caliphate. They're waiting for is Al-Mahdi, anyway. So I kind of feel, and again I could be wrong, but just sort of on a human level. I believe because they're not religious zealots, and they're not loonies, that they will wait for Trump to go. Trump is an anomaly in American politics. Most presidents in the United States will not risk international outrage. They won't risk escalation. They won't risk all these things. I believe that they will wait for Trump to leave office, whether that's soon or in another 4 years, because for them it's no big deal, because Trump potentially could set them back generations. If Trump were to start pushing back the borders of Iran, if he were to take out all their military bases, if he were to do these things, now you have a Shia country who is now vulnerable to the Sunni influences around them.
If you look, Pence and Pompeo are pretty much pushing for that to happen anyway, from what I've read in the press.
But see, so were the Democrats when they shot down the drone. I mean, how many people from the left got on Trump's case about being weak for not?
They weren't asking him to invade Iran or topple the government.
They were asking him to strike. What's so?
Right.
So what's the difference between that kind of escalation and
When was a Democrat saying, like, let's flatten Tehran, let's go do that?
Well, look, a war with Tehran, a strike against Iran is a strike against Iran. Whether you say let's regardless of what their optics are, the language.
Go and look at the people who are advocating for regime change in Iran.
Look,
they're all like FDD think tank people in DC. They're all hardline Republicans.
I don't agree with them. I mean, I'm not defending them, but I'm not going to jump on the Democrats. There are as many hawks on the Democratic side as there are on the Republicans. I mean, I believe that most politicians these days, whether on the left or right, are just these centrist globalist sort of. They're all making their money. They're all leaving office wealthy. But the thing is that regardless of whether the left or right, that Iran or the people in Iran, the regime in Iran, is going to outweigh Trump, because he will bring. Again, I don't want to say he's unhinged, because that's not an appropriate term. But he's not politics as usual, and they face the possibility of, like I said, being left almost toothless, surrounded by Sunni influence, and I don't think they want that. And I think that with the death of Soleimani, they realize that. So, I guess what piece of information? I don't know if there's any information that I want now. I don't know any of this to be fact. I wouldn't, get in a fist fight over it or bet a bunch of money on it. Maybe I'm just hopeful, that this is what it is.
All right, we've got a question for Maria here. Can Maria comment on her thoughts on how various countries train their journalists? Are they distinctly different news cultures, so to speak?
I think so. I think each country and perhaps different regions more than countries have different journalistic traditions. For example, where I come from, Italy has a very different way of doing journalism, in my opinion. Again, granted that I've not worked long in my home country, but especially the way that the language is used, I feel when I began reporting in Milan, it was sort of more. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the different language. English is not Italian, vice versa. But there was more of a. I found it a less structured way of composing a news article. I was very sort of attracted to Anglo-Saxon journalism, the type of journalism that I learned at Reuters and in other places, where I really learned a good way of structuring and building out a story. So yes, I don't know enough about many different the different sort of.
Well, what does that look like though? Like, as someone who's bilingual, that you've worked in both the countries, you have a lot of familiarity with both countries. I mean, reading an Italian newspaper versus an American newspaper, I mean, how do those cultural nuances reflect?
I think that the ethics of journalism are sort of like a universal constant. Like, journalists worldwide have the same creed in a way, like, which is reporting the facts and sticking to the facts and present an accurate account of what's going on around them, sort of in a way being the observers of reality and reporting that out to the reader who cannot directly access those facts. So in a way, that is sort of like the common denominator in the news business, in journalism across the globe. I think, for example, in Italy, we tended to have more elaborate leads in a way. A lead that was more, perhaps wasn't directly going into the nut graph or sort of like the heart of the story, but began a little ahead of the events.
There's
sort of introduced the events in a more elaborate way, for example.
A little bit more alliteration.
Maybe, yes. And it's something that perhaps you find here more in magazine journalism that presents the fact in a more perhaps.
So is it more of a storytelling fashion in a way?
Yeah.
Because I feel like me and
so.
you, we'd be told like, hey, your point needs to be in sentence 1, paragraph 1.
Absolutely, there's a very clear structure.
Yeah.
That, and it's there are set rules in journalism that it's important to respect. I think in presenting the facts because they're about, I think, intellectual honesty, and they're also about doing your job properly and delivering the news, which is what you're trying to do in a timely and accurate manner. But yes, are there different traditions in different countries? Yes, I mean, look at the British press, for example. Tabloids are a very big thing in the UK, and they do very, very distinctive journalism in a way. It's a very different format. It's they cater to a precise audience and a very specific audience, and then they know how to best serve that audience.
What I'd like to hear you weigh in on too is one of the big differences I think between America and the UK, Italy, just about any other country you care to name. Freedom of speech and freedom of the press is like written into our founding documents. We have things like the Freedom of Information Act. There's just a level of mandatory transparency in our government, and our government can be very duplicitous in so many ways. But there are other countries, like in Italy, I feel like you're not really going to find like hard-hitting investigative pieces about the Italian military or the sorts of things that you find here.
There is very good investigative journalism done in Italy. One thing I think that plays a huge factor is the language barrier. That stuff doesn't, the world is largely English speaking
Sure.
or Spanish speaking.
Right.
A very hard-hitting article about the collusion between, I'm speaking hypothetically.
Sure.
The Italian government and organized crime, which has been done, perhaps doesn't
Make it here.
It doesn't have as much resonation. It doesn't resonate as much. Italy is a smaller country, doesn't play such a huge role on the global scene. Many factors, but I read really good, in-depth journalism in Italy.
I read a book recently called Moneyland, written by a British journalist, British financial journalist, and he was saying they have a real big problem over there with the libel laws because you can't report on anything unless the person has been convicted of the crime first. So that prevents them from breaking huge stories because a big paper doesn't want to get sued out of existence. Likewise, the police would not even know to begin prosecuting this person because they haven't been made aware of the crime. So it's like this bizarre situation they get in where journalists aren't really able to do their job because they don't have the First Amendment that we have here in the United States.
And as you see, I think there's it's something that is very much cherished in the United States, and it's brought up often, and I think it's a very important pillar of American journalism that is sort of like one of the fundamental principles that has allowed American journalism to develop the way it has.
Here's an interesting question going through the feed, and who you with is asking. Because I think it relates directly back to the First Amendment and also the freedom of the press, but I would be interested in your perspective on Chelsea Manning, Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and other whistleblowers in terms of First Amendment. Like, I don't know how much you want.
That's for you guys.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on it.
Sure.
I mean, I don't consider any of those people to be whistleblowers per se. Do
you consider them to be journalists or reporters?
No. I mean Chelsea Manning and Ed Snowden. I mean, they're not journalists. They're not. They just aren't. They've never produced a single work of journalism in their lives.
Right.
So they're not. Now, whether or not they're whistleblowers, I mean, you can get official whistleblower status by you got to go and get a congressman on your side.
Right.
And this is what you do. You go to Congress. Jason Amarine, Special Forces officer, blew the whistle because he felt the way our hostages were being negotiated for in Syria was incorrect. So went to Congress, talked to Congress, went and offered congressional testimony, and he became a whistleblower. And for anyone out there who's thinking about blowing the whistle on criminal corruption or malfeasance in our government, I highly encourage you guys to go and talk to a congressman.
There's a procedure.
And you can talk to people like me and Maria too, who are journalists. I do not encourage you to just steal every piece of top secret information in that office and run to China or Russia.
Right.
You're not taking care of America, you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So I really don't encourage you to do that and go down that route. I'd really encourage you to, as frustrating as it is, to use the system. You can go to IG. IG has problems like that. The Inspector General and how that program works in the United States, like that's worthy of a journalistic expose, if you will, in of itself, because IG works for the agency that they're assigned to. But anyway,
they're like HR. HR is not on the side of the employee. They're just trying to protect the company from lawsuits.
Yeah, like if you see something, if you're an employee of the CIA, for instance, or the FBI, whatever, and you see something wrong, and you go to IG. IG works for the FBI or CIA. Like they are ultimately going to protect the institution. They're not going to look out for your best interests necessarily. Maybe that's an unfair thing to say. I just have talked to whistleblowers and read many accounts of people who have been burned. So yeah, it's frustrating. It's messed up. When you become a whistleblower, I mean, you are becoming a pariah in so many ways. You're sacrificing your career for the good of your country in a lot of ways. That you're pointing the finger at corruption, and you're taking a hit for the team, man. and it sucks to be that guy. But yeah, I would not encourage anyone to go down the route that Chelsea Manning or Ed Snowden went down.
What about Julian Assange? Like, where does he fall in it? Because he wasn't actually the one doing the hacking. He wasn't the one.
Assange set him. I mean, there's a lot of ins and outs to that whole story, and Assange is a shady character. In my opinion, I could not prove this, but in my opinion, I think. If you look at Assange, if you look at the people he hung out with, I think he was used as a proxy by foreign intelligence services and set up to leak information specifically about the United States. When he had opportunities to leak information about the Russians, he didn't. Mm-hmm. So it kind of shows, in my opinion, what his agenda was. And I would argue that perhaps he was working for, or maybe he was unwitting. I mean, maybe he was completely unwitting and thought he was an activist, journalist, or something like that. But he was, and I mean, this is just a fact, he selectively published and leaked information. And he called that a new form of technical journalism, that, instead of doing what journalists normally do of taking in the information and writing about it, he said, hey, we're just going to take these documents, we're going to add some annotations to them, so you understand what the acronyms mean, and we're going to publish them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm wearing like two hats here. I'm kind of speaking as, somebody who really does, I really am concerned with American national security, but I am also a journalist, and I have an obligation to, point to corruption or wrongdoing as well. And, I take those calls. And when somebody calls me and says, my husband, who is a soldier, is beating me, I would be an asshole if I didn't, listen to that. Mm-hmm. That's your job. So it's like these two things, and where do your values stand? But I think that, taking a bunch of top secret documents and spilling them, there are certain things like, Chelsea Manning leaked that video. What was the famous? It had a name. The video of the Apache pilots shooting up civilians. It's like, okay, you saw something that you disagreed with, like, I got that, but why are you stealing every State Department cable and leaking that? So
right.
It's like, okay, now we're getting beyond whistleblowing.
Right.
We're just stealing top secret information and leaking it to, the public. And, as a journalist, putting that hat back on, it's very different when me or another journalist, you go and you talk to people or who are in the intelligence community and you have a conversation and then you write about that and you write a story, that's one thing. Actually taking top secret documents and publishing it is something totally different.
So I think for you it's kind of interesting because you have actually have had different jobs over the course of your life, and this sort of putting on two different hats I find very fascinating. I've only known one thing in my entire life, my job. I wonder how you sort of reconcile the two things, which can be kind of different.
Yeah, I mean, it has its ups and downs in the sense that, as a former special forces guy, dudes who come out of that line of work feel a little bit more comfortable talking to me. It opens up some doors. When those guys come and talk to me, even if they cold call me, which happens sometimes, they know that I'm not like some anti-military person. They know like I'm not like out to get them or something like that.
You also understand the mechanism.
Yeah. So they don't have to like brief me on what like, hey, special forces is this, Rangers are that. Like you speak the same language. The flip side to that is what I do is considered by, again, in air quotes, the community. I mean, it's considered to be like treason. So I deal with something that you never would, that a traditional journalist, somebody who went to J school, would not really have to deal with. That I have like tremendous pushback, that I've had fallings out with friends, in some cases close friends of mine, because I asked questions that they felt shouldn't be asked, because I said things that people didn't want to hear, because I exposed things that people thought should have been kept quiet. So the response to it is also a lot of anger. And I mean, I know there's a lot of journalists out there experiencing that anger, that sort of public anger with the media in general. Mine has been more personalized in the sense that because what I do, it's seen as like a sellout, But for me, I mean, I'm pro-military, I'm pro-America, but I am also very much pro-reform. I believe in military reform. I believe in intelligence reform. I look at the way we're doing things, the mess we're making around the world, and it's not that I don't like my country. It's that I think we should do things better and smarter, and I don't think that we should be, sending all these soldiers to die overseas without any kind of strategy whatsoever. So yeah, maybe I'm editorializing here a little bit, but I think that like as a country, we have this this sort of like malaise that we just like keep doing the same stupid thing over and over again, acting like it's okay, and it's not okay. It's not. And so somebody has to pump the brakes, and somebody has to point a finger at that. And I think the job that someone like me can do, and not that I'm alone, there are others out there, is to just remind Americans every day, like, hey, this is going on. This shit is real. There are people dying over there. And it's just been an interesting experience because the more truthful you are, the more angry people get. People don't get angry by fake news per se. People get angry by real news. And the more real it is, and the more you're putting it in their face, and the more you're saying like, hey, this is going on, this is happening, and this is real, the more upset they get. And that's just been my experience walking through it. But I mean, I don't talk about it that often, and I don't like to complain about it because at the end of the day, it's one of those things like, hey, if you don't like it, find another job, pal, So, I mean, this is the path I chose, so I don't necessarily complain about it.
It's interesting.
Real quick, are you guys having a hard time hearing Maria? Do we need to turn her mic up? And that might be.
I probably need to speak louder.
Sound off.
No. We can turn up your mic too if that's an issue, because somebody said that your mic might be a little low. Alex Bennett, thanks for the donation. Thoughts on the Millennium Challenge 2002? I don't even know what that is.
That's a training
Honestly,
exercise I think from back in the day, I believe.
The Millennium Challenge 2002?
You need Jack to answer this question.
I do. Yeah, I need him to answer most of the questions.
I would have to.
And then I chime in as if I knew what was going on. It's my strategy.
That's always the best.
I let Jack take the lead, and then I jump in and go, oh yeah, the Millennium Challenge 2002.
Is my mic too low?
You sound good.
I sound good.
Okay.
I messed around with
So I
this.
said we're 5 by 5.
Okay.
So
Sorry about that, guys.
We are Lima Charlie.
So Maria, what I would like to do now is to talk about some of the bigger stories that you've worked on, and if you can kind of talk us through the process, because I don't know, I feel like a lot of folks out there, and going back to that anger that you sometimes hear from the public, they just don't really understand like how the newsroom works and how that whole process works. Mm-hmm. And they think like, you know, you're a reporter, you come into the office in the morning and your editor's like, hey, can you cook up some fake news today? You know, and it doesn't really work that way. Well, at least certainly not in a reputable, you know, place like Reuters or AP or...
You know, like every job, like people, you know, you go to work and you know what you're doing, you know the structure of what your profession...
What's expected of you.
What's expected, how it works. But like if you were to ask me how does an engineer work, you know, day in and day out, I just would have no clue. So, I mean, I understand there's the ins and outs of the profession are not probably well known, or people just don't know.
Right.
It's possible that, you know, the inner workings of a news organization are not well known, and but yeah, I mean, there's a structure, and I as I said, I work on the general assignment desk for the U.S. General News Service, which means I cover a lot of things that happen in the United States. That usually, so we cover a lot of breaking news. So, for example, if there are crimes or acts of violence or court cases, we jump on it and we report it out. It's a team of people, obviously, and there's assignment editors who sort of vet the stories and assign reporters to work on them during the course of the day. And once you get assigned a story, or you come up with a story idea that you're interested, you know, a subject that you're interested in exploring and presenting to readers, you will have an editor that will sort of follow you and follow the story from beginning to end. And you know, depending on what you're reporting on, whether it's what we call a spot news story, which is a story that you do in a day, you know, in a couple of hours, in 3-4 hours, depending on how much work it requires and how important the sort of the event is. You'll work differently as if you're tackling what we call an initiative story, which requires a bit more reporting, perhaps, a different storytelling format, perhaps, and a little bit more time. Yes, but I mean, it's as you guys know, it's busy. There's a lot of stuff going on.
So you know, it's like when something's breaking, I think of, okay, I saw it in the news, but you guys are the news. So how do you know when something's breaking, and how do you prioritize? So the crimes or court cases, like I'm sure they're going on all the time, yes, everywhere. Like,
it really depends on your outlet's sort of mission and public. We are focusing on national news, so we don't focus necessarily on local news. We're not. For example, and that's the importance of local news. Local news outlets can really focus on covering their own communities and bring to light a lot of issues that national or international media outlets don't have the resources to do for various reasons. And so, depending on how much interest an event might be, then coverage is sort of decided upon upon those criteria.
So is local
Following
news
those
sort of a
criteria.
feeder to the national news
It
level?
always works like that. You know,
Okay.
something usually starts out at a local level, and because of social media that functions as a giant sort of megaphone, it can immediately snowball very quickly into something that garners national traction, and that time you jump on the story. You know, sometimes it can be anything from a phone call from a source that alerts you to something. Sometimes it can be a press release that you receive in the mail. Sometimes it can be a tweet. You know, and obviously there's a different verification process that goes on that takes place according to what type of source is giving you the news. Or the tip, or whatever that is.
And in a perfect world, it's like, you know, like you said, a source hits you up with something like, this just happened, and you're like, you remember there's that one meme where the guy's like, you know, in a perfect world, it's like that. But there are also these programs now, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name offhand, but they like aggregate all the social media and they show you pinpoints on the map. And I know a lot of journalists use that nowadays to identify breaking news, like if there's a mass shooting or something like that.
What is that? Oh, they're just kind of...
There are different ones,
programs.
Interesting.
There's sort of like content management systems for...
Data miner, is that one?
There's one called NewsWhip. There's a bunch of brands and different products that work really well. It's because it can be kind of overwhelming to monitor such a vast realm of information and sort of filter it to really understand what is news and how to best report it out. These tools can be pretty helpful in identifying.
So is AI becoming more of a thing as a sort of that type of aggregator and then filter for?
I think yes. Again, I'm not an expert, but from what I can tell, yes. And automation that is sometimes informed by artificial intelligence is certainly something that, you know, algorithms and different technological means are really kind of shaping sort of the way we filter more than obviously not report the information, but filter and gather news gathering.
Yeah,
I would say it's changed a lot from where I started out, which again, I like
these
think
things,
that I'm not that
these
old.
things didn't
You
exist
know,
10
like,
years ago.
Oh God, no! Like not even 7 years ago. No, we didn't have these tools, and it's pretty. They have plus sides and downsides. The obvious for me downside is that there's really no time on off in a way, like
because it's always constant.
The news cycle is pretty crazy, you know. This, but it's also it can really allow you to do a more thorough job in a way, and gives you access to mounds of information that were otherwise not available.
All right, Maria, I'm still going to make you get back to the Maria stories that you still haven't told us about. But we got a question here. What's the craziest pitch you've ever heard from a political operative?
From a political operative? Oh my God, I'm so sorry to disappoint your viewers, but I don't cover politics. Pitches, journalists receive pitches, as I'm sure you know, Jack, every minute of every day. And there's actually, I should direct you actually to Twitter, because there are some journalists who
DM's open, bro.
No, do tweet the funniest pitches that they receive daily.
Oh, really?
And some stuff is pretty out there, and it's...
What's the craziest one you've gotten?
I don't know, man. I get things all the time about stuff that I really don't cover, like, biggest candy store just happened in, I don't know, Uganda. I don't know, something like that has really, like, you can't... It's hard to really look at it and say, wait, what's going on here? Do
you ever get, like, the Vatican is colluding with the Rothschilds to put chemtrails in the sky? Like
you get a lot. What I'm going to tell you is, you get a lot of crazy stuff. Yeah. But it's like if you open your Twitter, or,
right,
and there's a lot of information out there.
Is there anything that ever like seemed crazy at the outset and then actually like formed into something that was legitimate, or even if it was misinterpreted at the very beginning?
I mean, personally, that I have encountered, not off the top of my head, there are. One thing, let's put it this way, one thing I've learned is not to judge a book by its cover. Everything requires attention, and everything should be thoroughly examined and sort of vetted before you take or do not take action. And I find it a very important job to do your due diligence on these things. I would say it's fundamental in this business that we're in.
I try to tell women all the time not to judge a book by its cover. None of them listen.
I shouldn't have laughed.
None of them listen.
All right, so Maria, some of the bigger stories you've worked on. What are the bigger ones, the ones you're most proud of? I know you've spent quite a bit of time on certain stories.
Yes, I've spent a good amount of time on a story that I talked to you a lot about, which was when I tried to talk to some U.S. military veterans following the U.S. pullout from Syria. You gave me a lot of really good tips and advice, and as we were talking before about, having networks of friends and people you trust and you value, it's always, in a way, I think it's source building, and it's really important to get good information. I feel that story was really important to me for many reasons, but mainly because I was very, very, very interested and sort of self-conscious about the fact that I wanted to get these guys' stories out there correctly and properly at a very important time, and secondly because I learned a lot that I didn't know, and that for me is a big part of my job. I always try to go into a story saying, hey, I do not know very many things about this subject. I do not know. I want to learn, so please. And that's very different from being gullible, I feel. It's just being open-minded.
Sure.
And be a very good listener.
The smartest people were the ones who were like, yeah, I don't know.
Right. And I feel like but my biggest sort of goal was to really tell these stories accurately, and some of them were hard stories to hear, and it was an immensely rewarding and difficult experience for me. It was a more of a feature story, but it was really important to me. On the opposite sort of like side of things, we covered the Weinstein trial earlier this week, and that is obviously a huge story, very fast-moving story, and it was a really, really interesting experience for me. I learned a lot, and I'm not just saying it because I have to say it, but it was really like, I find that in reporting every occasion, everything that you report on, you learn something new, and especially being a general assignment reporter, the range of topics that you get to cover is so broad that you really have to be kind of as nimble as possible in trying to. What I can tell you about the Weinstein trial was that it was really cold.
Really?
I was out of the courtroom for hours.
Do you find that just like in a social setting, that when people find out that you are a journalist, do people tend to sort of like shut off to you, or
no? Most people are actually very friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
people love to talk.
Very curious about what I do. No, I've never really had somebody who's being confrontational or unpleasant or aggressive.
Or what? Not even that, but like worried or nervous, or like, are they?
Oh, in that sense, I'm not threatening enough.
Okay.
No, I'm no Jodie Cantor, you know. It's like no.
I'm gonna smile like I know who that is.
She's the New York Times reporter. Who
Okay.
Kind of co-broke the Weinstein story.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, people get nervous when I look at their LinkedIn profiles. Like, oh, what ended up in a Jack Murphy article?
So Jack is scary.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'm scary. They're just scared of what I'm gonna do. But so like the conclusions though of some of these works. I mean, what did you find when you went and spoke to these veterans about us withdrawing out of Syria? Because I mean, you've tracked down a couple people on your own, and then I also put you in touch with Greg Walker and Mark Giaconia. See, I'm happy to help out people I like. If you just inbox me though, asking for my sources, New York Times. But otherwise, I'm happy to help out. I'm a nice guy. What were your conclusions coming away from?
What were my conclusions?
Yeah, what did you find out as you talked to these guys? Talk to your sources for this article.
One thing that stood out for me,
Yeah.
and it's not the answer you want, I think, the dedication, the love for the institution, the love for the country, and the fact that such an experience really kind of ends up shaping lives forever. And that for me was not only fascinating but kind of moving in a way. It was the biggest takeaway for me from that story, regardless of
What do you mean, like the love for what institution? What the hell are you talking about?
I'm talking about the love for the military.
For the military itself?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The sort of.
You sound surprised, Jack. Where's that surprise coming from?
I don't know. I mean, you talk to a lot of different people. I mean, the story itself is about, the Kurds per se. It's not really about the military.
Mm-hmm. But it's, if you ask me as the person who talked to them for a fair amount of time, the overwhelming feeling I got was that.
Mm-hmm.
When you, maybe in that story or something else, I mean, I'll reference that story since, you're kind of talking about it now, but, I know that you go in with sort of as much of an open mind as you can in terms of...
Clean slate.
Yeah.
A blank page.
But we also, all of us have sort of preconceived ideas about whether it's anything. Do you find that like when you're going through stories like that, especially when they're so in depth and you're talking to so many people, that where you started and where you end are very different places in terms of just maybe perceptions or opinions or anything else like that?
No.
Or do you find that you are able to maintain a
I tried as much as possible, and maybe this doesn't sound realistic, but I really don't think about myself when I'm reporting.
That's amazing. I mean, that really is.
I don't think about what I think, really.
Yeah.
I'm really focused on delivering my story accurately and fairly to my readership and telling the story that the subject is telling me. Without... I'm not saying...
Yeah.
It's just...
Well, you're also, like you said, you're coming into it without the... I would bring probably a bias to that story because I was in the military, because I've been to Kurdistan and all this kind of stuff. And this is the benefit of coming into it with a blank slate, is that you're really just like, oh, this person said this happened, and then this happened, and you're not necessarily bringing in... Like you said, the institution leaves a mark on you,
Yeah.
You come... So, like...
nobody's like... We all learn. As I said, this is a learning process. We all learn. But I think for me, being a good journalist is really trying to take a step back.
That's really admirable. I mean, it really is. I
don't know if it's admirable. It's just, it's an exercise, and I'd like to think that I'm doing that exercise.
Yeah.
And what about the Weinstein trial? I mean, I have not been keeping track of that, really. I know that it began, and I saw the pictures of him with the walker, coming on out. I mean, what's going on? Where is this trial at right now?
It's jury selection, so it's in the very early stages. They're selecting the jury before the actual trial begins.
And he's being charged with rape.
He's being charged with, I think, one count of rape and then sexual assault.
How many counts?
I don't actually recall the exact number of counts, but they're two different charges from two different. There's two accusers in this particular case.
So-
It's a very complicated legal proceeding that has
So only 2 victims are going to trial.
the case being brought on behalf of only 2 victims.
Okay.
Yes.
Because
This particular criminal case.
Right.
Civil cases, there are separate. It's a very complicated.
and they're like probably being settled out of court and things
Well,
like this.
it has been reported already that there was a settlement for a certain amount of money a couple of weeks ago. A story that broke a couple of weeks ago. So there's different proceedings that are being handled in different ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they're just in jury selection right now.
Yes, correct.
Be interesting to see how that shakes out.
It's I think pretty interesting case to follow from a legal perspective and from the human story perspective also as well. I'm not a legal reporter, so there's different roles. Legal reporters really follow the legal proceedings. I cover the more outside the courtroom kind of scene, there's almost 2 stories unfolding at the same time. It's interesting.
That is interesting.
What are some of the other bigger stories you worked on? I remember you worked on one story that you published about is a transgendered man transitioning to a woman?
Yeah. No.
Or was that the other way around?
Yes, I focused for that's a topic that I'm interested, sort of like covering the LGBTQ community, being part of it myself it's always been sort of one of my areas of interest. I had that story which was last year, I think, or 2 years ago.
It was a year ago.
Yeah, maybe. Now I'm trying to really develop sort of focus on the environment and the human impact of telling the human story sort of behind the global warming, climate change, and environmental shifts in general. So I've worked on an interesting multimedia story about corals and some scientists that are doing some very interesting work on coral cores, which are basically parts of the coral skeletons that are extracted from coral reefs. And we went to this amazing laboratory in just 40 minutes from New York City, in the woods,
Really?
where they have these feet-long coral cores that they study and X-ray and are able to tell you all sorts of crazy stuff about the environmental changes in the changes in the environment around the corals going back hundreds of years.
Now, do you get, when it comes to things that you are interested in, I take it that you get to pitch certain
Yes.
story ideas or whatever. When things become national news in your realm of area, or in your realms of interest, do you have to compete for those stories, or how does it?
Or they get assigned to you?
They get assigned.
Okay.
You can express obviously interest, and it's like, hey, I'd like to cover this. But no. It's really the luck to work, the fortune of working in a very positive environment. And no. And when a big breaking news story happens, you just kind of, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Everybody jumps in, and we all sort of divvy up the workload, and we focus on getting the story out.
And then, how is? I mean, maybe it doesn't matter to you guys, but how is credit given, or how's the byline? How is that? When everybody works on it, is there a senior journalist, senior reporter?
No, so it depends on who's reporting the news. So if you're making calls and gathering information on a big breaking news story, there's usually a journalist who will sort of gather all that information from the various reporters and write it.
Okay.
So you either give paragraphs and sentences to this what we call Trump writer. And so the people who get the byline are the people who are gathering the information, and then the person who writes it will have a credit at the bottom.
I see.
And the person who edits it, or the people who edit it, will also have the credit at the bottom.
Okay.
And this varies from outlet to, it's very different depending on who you're working for.
Right.
It's not, but there are some things that are shared in the business, which is datelines, which is like where you're reporting from. So that's where the reporter is.
What do you do for fun? So you are always like in this world of fact, right? In this world of information, nonstop information. How do you unwind? Like, what do you do?
I have a serious addiction to crime TV shows.
Do you really? Like the fact, like actual,
No,
like
fictional.
Okay.
Fictional. I'm a nerd of British crime TV.
British crime TV. I honestly didn't know that was a thing. I'm not much for crime TV.
It's pretty big.
Is it?
Yeah, there's like there's a pretty big following also, I think, in the States of British TV. It's just different. And having lived in the UK for 5 years, I don't know, it just brings up some sweet memories.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love it.
What is different, or what is more appealing to you from like British crime TV compared to U.S. crime TV, like Law and Order SVU, or whatever
Right.
else it might be?
I don't know. The Brits are just
Sophisticated.
no. It's I love the accent.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I just love the accents, and
Yeah.
especially the quirky accent from, like, I don't know, the north of England or Scotland or Ireland, UK and Ireland. It's I find it fascinating. There's a bunch of awesome American TV crime shows that I follow, but now I'm going through, like, when you get like tunnel vision, you're just like going down a rabbit hole. I'm in that rabbit hole right now. Like, I'm like just doing British TV.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
awesome. Yeah, we had a question from Alex.
Okay.
What do you guys know about the LE division of the NOAA, the National Office of Atmosphere? What is that? What the NOAA is?
I don't know anything about them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't either. The
National
Oceanography and Atmospherics, right?
Administration, yeah.
Administration.
That's
Their law enforcement division? I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I think every federal agency has some sort of law enforcement.
Everybody's got a SWAT team.
Which is
They're all
super
strapped
scary
up.
because, like the IRS,
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine was an accountant, and she's like, I think I might go to the IRS. I'm like, why? She goes, because they get to carry guns. I'm like, okay.
You're getting ready for the boogaloo over there, Dave?
Yeah. And then thoughts on the new 5.7 pistol from Ruger?
I don't know anything about the 5.7 pistol from Ruger. The 5.7
Thanks, Alex.
that FN fires, the FNP90 and the 5 and 7 pistol that they make. It's interesting. It's an intermediate pistol round. I mean, it can reach out to about 100 yards or so.
Yeah, I mean accurately, like I honestly don't know anything about it. I
It's interesting.
know 9mm and I know 45, and that's kind
I fired the FNP90 once. It's a cool gun.
yeah.
Yeah, little submachine gun. But yeah, I don't.
Maria,
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Thoughts on the LE, the law enforcement division of the NOAA?
Am I still here?
Huh?
Am I still here?
And thoughts on the
5 and 7 pistol.
Especially on that, you want to hear my thoughts? I don't even know what that is. I thought it was a snack or something.
Tasty
No, I'm
treat.
joking, obviously.
So
Tasty treat.
the state of the media. A lot of people not happy. There's a lot of navel gazing, if you will, both within the media and outside. Kind of this almost like self-loathing. I feel like some of the criticisms I think are very valid. Others, not. But what do you think about? What do you make of the state of the media right now and where it's at right now? I mean, it feels like it is in a bit of a crisis, doesn't it?
Are you talking from a business perspective? Or?
Business, but also philosophically, ideologically. I mean, I think there's been some self-reflection, especially since 2016, about.
I think it's just like any other business. It's evolving, and there's pains and adjustments that are being made, and I really wish I was smart enough to have a comprehensive idea of what's happening to the media business as a whole. I think I'm more fascinated in the business side of things and how things actually work than in anything philosophical. that might be going on. And I have no, I really don't feel qualified to speak to that. Like, I know what you're saying, and I know there's a lot of talk about the state of the media in the U.S. specifically, I would say. I try to focus as much as possible daily on doing my job well, and that for me is what the media is. Might sound cheesy, but that's what it.
Do you
what
pay
I believe.
attention to other media, like maybe other like news, but do you pay attention to other media outlets, whether it's Fox or CNN
Of course,
or
yeah,
MSNBC?
you have to. I think it's part of our due diligence to really be well read.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes.
What do you make then? I mean, do you think it's true that that there's a deliberate effort to like discredit the press right now?
Pass. Hard pass.
Maria, you're such a softie.
There was a question for you. There was two questions for you actually. One, do you watch Luther?
Yes, I watched it all. It's amazing. Actually, is it amazing?
What the hell is that?
It kind of, I loved it. To whoever asked this question,
It's
great
DC
question.
Nolan.
DC Nolan. I liked it.
And he has it in all caps, so it is an important question.
I feel by the end of it, Luther himself kind of irked me.
Okay.
I wanted to.
Didn't care for the character development so much, or?
He just became kind of absurd to me, like extreme. And it's Idris Elba, so a great actor. He just became too much for me.
Okay.
But it was a great show.
Okay.
I totally.
And for our viewers who are not familiar with Luther, and Jack and myself, what is it exactly?
It's I think it was created for the BBC or by the BBC, but it's a detective show.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
That you can now, I think, stream pretty much anywhere on US OTTs, featuring Idris Elba, so this great British actor, and it's kind of a procedural. I think the plot lines are very entertaining. Cases are pretty gruesome. It's one of those things that you keep watching, but by the end of it, his character is just like.
It's a lot. I mean, a lot of detective shows, a lot of murder mysteries are like that. Like they feel like they have to one up themselves.
Yeah, and then it becomes too much, and you're like,
Right,
oh, this
right,
is really
right.
not plausible anymore.
Like there's that Netflix series. I think it was called The Killing.
Yes, in
With
Seattle, set in
Yes,
Seattle.
with the redheaded detective,
yes. And the really tall, lanky guy. Yeah.
who's all strung out, and that was a great show.
That was a great show. Cinematography also was amazing.
But by the end of the last season, you're kind of like,
I know.
you know, the connections get to be like, really, she is connected to this guy just by happenstance, who is the villain.
I know, it's
you
just
know,
kind of like.
yeah.
But if you just want to like kind of.
Veg out.
They're perfect. They're perfect.
And there was one more for you.
I hope
It was a follow-on. It was.
it's more about British TV shows, please.
Oh, here's a good one. Andrew had a question for us here. Do you think that video explanations of news organization retractions would help restore trust in journalists, like a video of a reporter explaining what went wrong and taking ownership of the mistake?
I think I'm not sure about I think the format is something debatable. I think it's always important that reporters explain, or news outlets actually explain corrections as elaborately as thoroughly as possible. It's definitely like one of those very important things that are necessary to do your job properly as a journalist and to serve the public.
So I'm going to come at my other question more obliquely to try to get an answer out of you this time. It's been interesting to see how the press has taken steps to like they will do a big story, and then there'll be like the sidebar story to explain like how we wrote this story, how we sourced it, how we did it. You know, here's the dude or the girl who wrote it, and this is how, like, they're trying to increase like information literacy in the United States, because the press, it can be this mysterious thing, I think, to people. Like, what do you think about all of that when you see that? Like, is it a good thing that they're trying to do like almost this sort of like community outreach effort to say like, this is how we work?
Well, you're gonna hate me now, but let me just reverse the question. Do you find them helpful?
I don't read them.
There you go. You answered your own question.
Yeah, but I'm also, you know, I write stories, so it's like in some cases I actually know the journalists in question, like I know them personally, so it's like not like my relationship is a little bit different.
I think there's a you know, people's appetite for news is very varied and different, diverse. It might sort of serve a certain readership, and for sure. I mean, it's like, in a way, experimenting with different storytelling formats. I think there's value in experimenting.
Dave, you ever read that stuff?
I don't read.
That's a hard no.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a retraction, then I think the retractions are as important news as a story. And I feel like a lot of media outlets bury their retractions. I feel as though like they're sort of obfuscated, or that they're honestly, I think that the front page of a newspaper or the main page of a website should be there. They should have any retractions or any corrections or anything should be the first thing you see, and not buried either at the bottom of an article after the credits or whatever, or on page 6 of a magazine. I think that it's just like if I'm in a relationship and I make a mistake, then I need to apologize for that mistake, and I need to make it very clear that what I did was a mistake, and not bury my apology, in some sort of kind of twist. You know what I mean? So, I feel that trust in the media has eroded, and they are responsible for that. Because they tend to. I mean, I feel like everybody wants to break a story, and so. So now, because information flies so quickly, and so many media outlets, and not like news organizations, but media outlets, and I consider Fox, CNN, MSNBC. I consider them all media outlets. They're media conglomerates. They rely on advertising dollars. They're entertainment. And the thing is that. They are the reason these channels, 24-hour news, these channels, and a lot of newspapers and whatnot, whether, again, the left-leaning, right-leaning, it doesn't matter. They are so quick to break a story that supports their angle, that supports their side. And so many people go around on both sides of the aisle believing something completely non-factual, and then these organizations do not do anything to really make it known that they were wrong, or that they jumped the gun.
That, and also back to what I was saying before, is that there is a op-ed section and there is a news section, and Fox will say the same thing, like, hey, we have our hard news, and then over here we have our commentary. We have the Bill O'Reillys and the Carlson Tuckers and that kind of stuff. But like for the public that consumes these media sources, it's all just the same thing. Like literally, they don't differentiate between them.
No,
it's all just one. It's just one big media blob.
Like you say, Fox, but look at Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, I'm not trying to disregard that. Of course.
And the thing is it, and it's. I mean, and the other thing is like, it's sort of how facts are presented. Again, like you can say that Republicans voted down this bill for firefighters, or Democrats voted down this bill for veterans. But are you really, that might be the fact, that's what happened, but they're not telling the story. Or, was Baghdadi an austere scholar?
Oh, the Washington Post story.
Sure, I guess.
That's technically
guess. Was Mao what did the New York Times call Mao a cultural?
I don't know.
Something like okay, if that's how you want to present these people, whatever. So I don't know. I ranted, but I feel like the media, any retractions they make, that should be the front page news. Look, we messed up.
Yeah.
This is how we messed up.
Yeah,
I don't need to know why they messed up, because it's like the old military thing. Like, I don't need your excuses. Just
Yeah. Just put it out there.
Just tell me what you did wrong and correct it. That's it.
What's Maria's dream story to get as an assignment?
Oh, that's a really nice question. Oof. Deep crisis, wait. I would like, okay, I know this is going to sound vague, but I don't know yet what shape this will take, concrete, in a concrete way, but I would love to be able to tell the story of a community in a particular area of the country that I find interesting because of various reasons, and I would like to really be able to tell something that they've done that made them come together as a community to tackle an issue that is threatening them. For example, and I know I'm sure it's been done before, but I would like to find a better, a newer angle, is a coastal community who's really threatened by rising sea levels. There are some people in their own communities that are doing amazing things to really change the way their towns or cities are gonna survive for the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years.
Or have you seen these communities coming together to form like sanctuaries where they're saying like, we won't accept refugees?
Yes, there's also, I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to tell the best people story possible. That is sort of one of the reasons why I went into journalism. It's really to listen to folks, and I know, again, another thing that sounds corny, but is what I really, really enjoy doing. And so I'm happy, I would be honored to bring people's stories to life if I'm capable.
It'd be great too, because there's just so many parts of the country where there are these communities doing good things and bad things, whatever you want to, say about it. I just feel like
the U.S. is such a huge country. There's so many stories to be told. I feel.
In a big city like New York, right? We have major media outlets here, right? Like the New York Times owns a building over by Penn Station. Like there are huge papers here. New York City is covered, and not always covered well. And I'll go on a separate rant on another episode about that. But my point with that is that there are rural communities all over America, local newspapers shutting down left and right. So like there are just stuff happening in the flyover states, the square states in America that it's just not being covered properly or at all. And that's a real problem.
Yes.
So I found the other part of the question. Do you feel that it was intentional that the LA district attorney filed charges on the first day of the Weinstein trial?
No comment.
Okay. Graph.
I saw somebody commenting that I look like a guy who listens to Radiohead. Now what the hell does that mean?
You kind of look like a 1990s hipster, Jack. That's what they're trying to tell
Really?
me. Yeah. I'm not sure whether that's a comment.
Because I grew up listening to industrial music.
But see, here's
Which I
the
did.
thing is that, well, the 90 hipsters?
And
Because hipsters didn't really start to like...
No, I'm sort of like conflating
Oh,
two.
because for me,
Two things.
I think that the whole hipster look came from photos of SF guys with the big beards and the shamags and stuff like that.
Well,
And before that, it was emo. Remember emo?
Yes.
That was the thing.
like kind of like
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
I did listen to Radiohead when I was a teenager.
didn't?
I had the albums. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna say I love them. Like I'm actually.
Really?
Yes, I grew up listening to.
But I was.
Radiohead.
I don't know if like people I grew up with listened to Radiohead, but I was a weird kid too. I listened to like Skinny Puppy and Nine Inch Nails, and
Uh-huh.
I had
Alice in Chains.
Gus, Alice in Chains. I had Supreme Beings of Leisure, Dead Can Dance, all that.
So yeah, you were pretty weird.
Yeah, I was pretty out there, man. Juno Reactor,
That is outside of my
Basement Jacks.
Basement Jackson.
Yeah, you remember that because they were big in
European.
Europe. They were big in Europe. Orbital.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And later came Moby, which is very different.
Moby's old stuff, his house music, I really
Yeah.
liked. And then I felt like he sold out. He started doing that crap.
Commercial.
Yeah. But yeah, I grew up listening to all that stuff. I loved and I still listen to industrial dance music.
While he's working, which amazes me because I can't
Focus.
if I'm writing, I can't listen to any music.
Well, now there's some of the other genres. Future pop is another genre I really like. But now there's like synthwave. There's all these like 1980s like throwback synth music, and it's better than it was back in the day. It's like actually good.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Shut your mouth.
Do you listen to that stuff?
Not the new stuff. I mean,
But the old stuff.
How could I not? I was an '80s kid.
I know. That's why
of course I did. I was an '80s kid. I loved everything '80s.
Now there's like what is it called? Well, there's Perturbator. There's what are some of the other big ones? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Laserhawk is another one. There are all these bands out there that are doing that kind of stuff.
Nerding out.
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the old. I like a lot of the new. I like the retro pop stuff. Sort of the retro disco. There's a lot of. There are a lot of people now that are like. Lizzo's doing some kind of retro sound.
A lot of people.
James Brown
You're a
kind of
Lizzo
stuff.
fan?
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What do you listen to, Maria?
Okay. Right now it's in a loop. Local Hero by Mark Knopfler.
I'm not sure if I know that.
Dire Straits.
Dire Straits? Okay.
He's the
okay.
lead,
Yeah. Okay.
And he wrote the soundtrack for this really strange movie that I think went out in the 80s or early 90s called Local Hero. It's about an oil executive from Houston who goes to Scotland to try to secure a plot of land to drill. And he has this sort of conversion and he's like, spending time there in the community. He's like, no. And the music is just amazing. So
I listen to a lot of Southern Gothic.
Really?
Oh yeah, I love Southern Gothic. Blues, and then also I was a huge Prince fan, growing up. So, and there are people now that are sort of kind of hitting that sound, the James Brown sound.
That's true. It's all coming back.
Yeah, it is. Vintage Trouble, they do a lot of the sort of Motown sound. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been more into the German dance music, German industrial dance
hardcore.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody was actually asking me about K-pop. And it was just funny.
BTS.
My K-pop story is that when I had to take, it was a required, I had to have a music credit in college. And I'm 30 at the time, 31, taking this class on East Asian music. And I had to write a paper analyzing East Asian music. So K-pop, I mean, if you guys don't know, I mean, you can go, everyone's familiar with Gangnam Style, but K-pop is fucking huge.
It's huge.
a huge
It's
thing.
fun.
BTS.
I mean, it's so
Have you
much
heard of
fun.
BTS?
And it's insane.
Yeah.
What is it?
BTS, the
BTS.
band.
I'm pretty sure
No,
I
I don't
I'm
know
pretty sure I have
BTS.
them on my
They're
playlist.
huge.
At the time, there was a group, because they're really big into like boy band groups and girl groups. There's one called Girls' Generation, and there's like 7 girls. And you know, if you've never seen K-pop before, like these girls are probably like 18 or 19, but they look like they're 12. And here's a 30-year-old your pal Jack Murphy watching Girls' Generation music videos like on repeat in the student lounge over and over again. And it's like these girls that look like they're freaking 12 years old wearing hot pants, like do 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 do, and dancing around. And I'm like, oh my god, if anyone sees me watching this, I'm ruined.
How did the paper go?
I passed the class. My final paper I wrote on
That's the class.
the score to Ghost in the Shell. Well, it was probably my favorite film. And the professor actually tried to talk me out of it because he was like, it's very difficult to do that. Because he was a musical ethnocologist. And to try to go into music and to try to tear apart like where one culture ends and the next begins is like basically impossible to do. And the score to Ghost in the Shell, it has traditional Japanese, an ancient Japanese dialect in it, combined with Bulgarian bells.
Interesting.
So they fused these two things together, and as a undergrad, I attempted to analyze this in a paper knowing nothing about music. But I mean, I got like an 85 or 87 on the paper, so it was okay. It was fun to do.
Okay.
There were some more questions about the your shows, The Wire.
Yes. Oh my god. I
The
love
Wire
this
is
media.
awesome, yeah.
Maybe I should
Okay.
start a podcast about British
You
TV.
should.
Yeah. DC Nolan, Jessica Jones was Marvel, man. Come on. Did you watch any of the Marvel shows on Netflix?
I have to admit, no, I'm not a Marvel fan.
Were you a communist?
Obviously.
Line of Duty.
Yes, Line of Duty is pretty good. If you haven't watched this, a relatively more recent one called The Unforgotten, with this British actress I love. She's called Nicola Walker, and that is a pretty new take, sort of on procedurals. I'm not going to reveal. I'm not going to spoil the plot for you, but it's available on some American U.S. streaming services. So Unforgotten, check it out.
Check it out, Unforgotten. Let's see here.
I think I'm in the wrong profession, clearly.
You should be doing entertainment news.
I know. Well, that's pretty fun.
Alex says, do you think Cats 2019 film adaptation should be considered an enhanced interrogation technique? What movies are you looking forward to in 2020?
You guys go.
I'm actually looking forward to seeing the new Wonder Woman film. I took my daughter to see the
first one was phenomenal.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing the new one. It takes place in like 1984, so it's all 1980s.
Yeah.
Themed. So
Yeah.
like a Stranger Things Marvelized.
Kind of, where they're in the like mega mall in the beginning.
Yeah.
I feel like you missed out on that whole mega mall culture there, Maria, because by the time you got here, it was kind of.
Yeah.
Guys, I cannot tell you how much malls freak me out, so I'm
Really?
fairly happy that I grew up in Europe.
It's a surreal experience. Like if you think back to that.
They're
day.
like-
Well, I mean, I grew up in the Midwest, so malls were
That's
malls
what
were
there is.
that's where you
Mall
hang
life.
out.
Mall
yeah.
life, man.
Yeah, mall rats. Man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's where we hung out. You know,
And it's fascinating for me as a
Orange Julius.
what's orange juice?
What's Orange Julius?
It's a mall thing. No, it was like it's a like a fast food place where they just do Orange Julius and hot dog on a stick were like the two. Orange Julius.
Cinnabon
This predates Cinnabon.
predates.
This predates. I mean, I'm pretty sure it predates.
Dave, this is
Cinnabon.
like fucking
Hot dog-
archaeology.
hot dog on a stick, hot dog on a stick was basically just that. It was a place that sold corn dogs. That was it.
I remember the pretzel place.
There's still press replays in the mall.
yeah, the press place was
Auntie Annie's.
yeah, Auntie Annie's. I think.
But like 90% of the malls have shut down.
Yeah, yeah, and even the malls that are still going, a lot
Kind
are
of,
they're
they're a shadow of
Yeah.
what they were.
I
yeah,
don't know. There's some huge ones upstate, guys.
well,
There's some.
yeah,
There's like the
They're like
Paramus
towns.
Mall around
They're
here.
Yeah.
towns.
But I mean, it's just like, dude, back in the day, man, I remember as a kid, as a teenager, going to the mall and buying the like anime series I liked, like on VHS
from
tape.
Suncoast.
Man, I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it's Suncoast because I think Suncoast was the only chain.
It was
in
just
malls.
VHS tapes as far as the eye
Yeah,
can
that's
see,
probably
and you
Suncoast.
go in there and buy
VHS.
anime, and then there's a whole store of CDs. Like the younger people watching this don't even know what the hell a CD is, and there's stores, and you would go and physically buy an album. Yeah,
I remember that.
I remember when CDs first came out.
when they hit the CD.
Instead of MCs.
Instead of cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called cassettes.
Instead of cassette tapes, like CDs and laser discs.
Laserdisc was a weird thing.
Yeah, it was there. I remember laser discs. I remember when ATM machines first came out because before that, like my parents would have to go out and write checks at the grocery store for the weekend, so they'd have cash over the weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, back in the good old days. But
Simpler times.
J.C.
guys.
Penney's and
Simpler times.
Suncoast Video, Orange Julius, Hot Dog on a Stick. What were all the mainstays in a mall? Spencer's Gifts.
Babbage's. Hot Topic.
Yeah, Hot
Speaking of
Topic.
language.
Pacific Rim or Pacific.
Pacific. Yeah. I know the one
Sun,
you're talking
Pacific
about.
Sun. Pacific
I know
Sun.
exactly the story you're talking
Pac
about.
Sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, malls were we went to go do all our shoplifting when I was a juvenile delinquent. Malls were. Anyway, somebody asked, did Maria work on Thomson Reuters Foundation 2018 piece about the world's most dangerous countries for women?
No, because I was already working for Reuters.
Reuters. Sorry, I can't
yes.
say Reuters. Reuters.
No. So the short answer to that is no.
Okay. There was a second part, but it was, if so, do you know why the U.S. was ranked the 10th most dangerous country for women? But
I would guess it's based, again, I'm speculating because I didn't take part in that reporting, but it's a survey, so it's, actually no, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I
That's
really don't.
Well, I mean, I would speculate too, without looking at the data, that we probably keep better statistics than most countries do.
sure.
In those statistics, it's like, if you look at like number of people who are sexually assaulted in America, it's like one.
That and one
it's
thing
like
I can,
1 in 4.
one
Like
thing
it's
that
crazy.
I've actually reported on, the U.S. is pretty bad rates of maternal mortality. So if you obviously you consider that as part of a woman's well-being in a country. Dangerous countries.
Dangerous countries.
Then, it makes it dangerous for a woman.
Well, yeah,
to give
it would
birth.
have to.
Yes.
I guess you'd have
So-
to know what their methodology for
Yes,
determining
exactly.
what
So I can't
danger
really
was.
speak to that, but
Yeah.
there's a bunch of factors where the U.S. fares pretty poorly in terms of health and well-being of women.
Let's see here.
Nolan wants to know how old we are.
I'm 22.
I knew you were going to cash that check. I'm 36. And Dave is 55.
And I'm 34.
Well, how old did you say I was? I'm 49. I'll soon be 50. I read at a 53-year-old level, though, so I think that I'm pretty mature for my age. Yeah. 49 with the body of an 80-year-old. Is the U.S. Army going to get forced out of Iraq?
I don't think so. As much as a lot of them would like us out of there, America is the biggest scam in town. I mean, people.
Our money.
Yeah, our money.
Yeah.
GOIs like stuff in their pockets with American dollars.
Sure.
Like, oh yeah.
I mean, at this point, I think the Iraqi government is pretty much in the pocket of the Iranian, not in the pocket, but under Iranian influence. But those American dollars are pretty sweet. So
they all want to get like a green card to come here. They're going
Right.
to stuff their pockets and then come live, down the Fairfax, Virginia area.
Meanwhile,
Their people are screwed.
Meanwhile, leaving their people screwed. And open
Screwed.
to the predatorial machinations.
I was
Iran.
thinking about this today. Like, I have a lot of sympathy for like the Iraqi people and like everything they've been through. I have like almost no sympathy for the government of Iraq,
No.
which is just like corrupt to its core.
Yeah, 100%.
And does absolutely nothing to help the aforementioned Iraqi people.
No.
Like, throw a dog a bone here, guys.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certain people people have like when the whole Hezbollah protest happened. People are like, well, people have been protesting for months. It's like people have been protesting the Iranian influence that in the Iraqi government. They want Iraq for Iraq. This was something completely separate that was sort of orchestrated. So don't conflate. Don't throw these two things together.
Well, I mean, the Sunni-Shia divide is first and foremost in Iraq, and everything else, let's say America, for instance, gets filtered through that lens.
Right.
Whether rightly or wrongly, I mean, when we were there back in the day, I mean, we're still there, but when I was there back in the day, the Sunni or the Shia, they would interpret it as America is allied with the Shia, but now they're changing sides. They're allied with the Sunni, and now they're doing this and that. And they interpreted that for their own reasons, but I mean, I tried to explain to the Iraqis I worked with, I was like, Americans don't have
They don't know.
any idea
They have
what
no
Sunni
idea.
and Shia is.
No.
Like
And our politicians certainly.
yeah, and I told them, I was like, we just see you guys as Muslims. Like, we do not understand your these nuances. Like, we just
Right.
don't get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just to say it's unfortunate what has happened to Iraq is an understatement. It's an understatement of the 21st century.
I mean, look, I think that the initial invasion was ill-advised. I don't think it was a good idea. And then sort of like, once you break that egg or whatever, we had an opportunity to do something good.
And so did the Iraqi government. They had an opportunity also.
Yeah, and there were a lot of people, and I'm not saying that that the American people weren't there, trying to do something good, because you worked with Iraqis, I worked with Iraqis. I mean, I wanted them. They wanted to free Iraq. But our policies, our politicians, Bush, Obama, they all get it wrong. And they put these people like Bremer in charge who don't know what the hell they're doing. And they get it wrong. And, but the thing is, again, I don't know that any country really does foreign policy right. Like, the countries that do foreign policy right are the countries that don't really have a say in the matter.
There's also no other country in the world that is a global power the way the United States is.
No,
and we don't handle it well.
Well, look, I 100% agree that we don't handle it well. But I would
if China were in charge, would they be handling it well? No.
That's my thing. Is I would challenge anybody to come up with a country that had our power.
Well, no one has. No one ever has.
To handle it better. Like, policies are always going to be flawed because human beings are flawed, and the country, America is not this homogenous. There's no America. There's just a big group of people, right? So, and people mess up all the time.
Okay, here's
Yeah.
a penetrating question.
Okay, are you ready for the real stuff?
Time for me to
It's about time. Yeah.
Is there a pecking order among Reuters reporters? Is there an assignment everyone wants? Do American journalism schools properly prepare students?
Let's start from the last question. Didn't go to school in America, so I don't know. You have to ask an American journalist or somebody who studied here. There's a story. Is there a story that everybody wants? Was that the question? That everybody's after?
Is there an assignment everyone wants?
Is there an assignment that everyone wants? Well, I would like to give you a straight answer, but I really can't, because journalists are people and people have different interests.
Sure. Are there some assignments that are more career making than others that people vie for?
I mean, yes. like in every other profession, there are some more high-profile sort of jobs, and some people, I don't know, like, you know, everything in life depends on what you want to do with it. There are events that you read every day in the news, and reporting on those is
good for
what
one's career.
What I would consider sort of like a very high profile jobs. Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a pecking order in the newsroom?
No. Like, is there
an informal rank structure of sorts?
Outside of maybe like
Informal.
seniority, yeah.
No, I stick to my answer. No.
No? So you just walk into your boss's offices, this is what I'm doing
No,
today.
informal, you said.
That would be informal.
Like, there's no informal order. There are hierarchies, yes, for sure. There's a worker structure like everybody else, but like everything else. But I don't know. I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
Short answer would be no for me.
So let me just say to everybody joining us tonight, thank you for coming and watching. Maria, there's like 20 to 30 people watching us live at any given time. Like you have tried
officially.
You have tried to hide. You've tried to dodge and dodge and dodge and dip and dive, and here you are, media star. But thank you everyone who joined us tonight. Please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button down below and hit the bell icon so that you get notified the next time we go live. And if you like what we're doing, there's also a link down in the description for our Patreon page if you want to make some donations to the cause.
Yeah, even $1 a month, guys. We're like halfway to paying our rent, so we appreciate it. Every dollar counts.
It makes a big difference.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Where can we find you? I mean, we've been talking about your work all night. Where can we find your work? We want to go and find it. And where can we find you on the interweb?
Reuters.com.
And
REUT.
So I go to Reuters.com and Maria's articles are there on the front page.
Google.
Help throw a dog a bone here. Like, come on. What do I got to do to find your work?
The best way to find it, honestly, is to Google my name and my last name and Reuters, and there will a page will come up with all my recent work.
All right.
Fantastic.
And you're on Twitter?
I am.
At?
Maria Caspani 85.
There you go.
Yes, that's me.
Send her all of your crazy news tips. You got some conspiracy theories.
Welcome any news tips.
You got conspiracy theories about
Throw
the Vatican, chemtrails, the JFK assassination.
That's for Jack.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Like
it was a lot of fun. Like answered a lot. I mean,
I hope
I'm very ignorant about the news. Yeah, so this was very fascinating. Good stuff. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming in and telling the story and telling us about some of the stories you worked on, and just illuminating us about how things work in the newsroom.
I doubt it, but thanks for having me.
And thank you for filling us in on good British procedurals.
Yes, so that seemed to be the most successful part of my contribution. I'm really glad.
No, it's people are into
People
it.
hit me up for tips on British TV crime TV
if you
shows,
guys
please.
if you guys need some stuff to add to your watch list,
That's me.
All right, next time we'll have to do a whole episode about like Netflix shows, comic books you and I got covered.
Oh yeah.
When you do TV shows, call me. I watch them all.
Yeah, British electronic music.
That is, again, you.
All right. Alex said, awesome show, guys. Don't forget the subreddit.
Oh, that's right, the subreddit. Please find our subreddit at the subreddit is the Team House.
It's reddit.com/r/the Team House.
The Team House. It is the Team House.
Yeah.
Yes.
So take a look.
Also, we are on iTunes and SoundCloud. I'll get us on Spotify soon.
Yeah. If you guys like the podcast edition, and likewise, if you're listening to the podcast right now, we're also on YouTube and we also live stream, so you can go check us out there.
The Team House on YouTube. Do we have anything else to pass?
No, man, that's about it.
I think we should keep Maria here for a little while longer.
I think
No,
we should keep
we're
her
way
here.
past her.
Another
Way past my bedtime.
another like 3 hours
Yeah.
at a minimum.
She bet us that we couldn't
Guys,
beat
are
our
like 2
record.
hours and 20 minutes.
Maria is holding out on us
You
right
owe me.
now. She's got all this information.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you pay for this.
She said if we could stretch this out to 3 hours, that she would break the news on the new
But-
Brexit strategy.
But
on the newest crime TV show.
But wait, there's more, because Maria's going to do an exclusive video for our supporters after this.
Oh yeah. No.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
This wasn't part of the.
Oh yeah.
But spoiler alert, it'll be Luther. All right, guys. Thank you
All
very
right,
much. Thanks for
everyone.
joining us. See you guys soon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.